I tried to pick out one point from all the 3 pieces of research that we've done over the last few months. I think, as I said, no need for a reboot. Wi-Fi is fundamentally working well across all areas, and the people that we spoke to are unanimously positive about what it's achieving. In terms of the MARB, they've obviously bedded in well. The attendance of key partners is critical for unlocking some of that service flex. And I guess there's a need to keep trying to bring those absent partners on board, because including staff at a senior level is critical to achieving that sort of service flex and system change. In terms of peer mentors, obviously that lived experience, hopefully I've captured the way in which it adds considerable value to the project. I think there's scope there, and I'm sure all the localities are doing this, but to continue to evaluate the support they need. And also, I've not really talked about this, but to strike a balance between not putting too much responsibility on peer mentors, but at the same time, not leaving them with spare time that is unfilled, or with too much tasks that are fundamentally mundane. And the beneficiaries themselves, they're universally positive about the support they've received. So obviously a key question in the interviews that we have with beneficiaries is what difference the support made. The kind of evaluation jargon, what's the additionality? What kinds of things were happening that would not have happened were Wi-Fi not in place? So the people that we spoke to told us about things. There were a number of milestones in their lives. They were using drug and alcohol less. They were accessing treatment and services in some cases for the first time. They were better able to hold down their tenancies. They felt better in themselves mentally and physically. They were more trusting of other services and more willing to use them, and also just generally had a greater optimism, a greater confidence in the future. Now, in some cases, those milestones are relatively small. So people talk, for example, one example was one person who spoke about how they'd made an unaccompanied bus journey for the first time. But in other cases, those changes were transformational. And the couple of quotes I've put there are indicative of kind of wider sense that without Wi-Fi, things could have been very bad indeed. So the 2 individuals there talked about how without the support, they might have topped themselves, so I don't know whether I'd still be here. And what was interesting when you ask what exactly was it that made the difference, sometimes it was the practical support that was being provided, but in other cases it was that relationship with the navigator itself that was really the catalyst for change, that was making the difference to their lives. Wi-Fi supports you with self-worth. The world's a brighter place.
So for the actual customer satisfaction, the beneficiaries, we interviewed 67 people on the project, who've been on the project for more than 6 months. Overwhelmingly found that the support had been consistently better or better than expected, and nearly almost all agreed or strongly agreed that the navigator's role supported beneficiaries in the way we'd intend it to. And again, the comments sort of speak for themselves. The only service that's helped and not tried to pass the buck is Wi-Fi. The support of the team has turned my life around. I've got things done that I never thought I could. And I feel I get listened to more now that Wi-Fi supports me. And these kind of reflect very much the original intent of the project, which was to give beneficiaries a voice in their own recovery and their own treatment, and to give them more effective outcomes. So I think the key measure for us is about whether people find that they have a better experience engaging with external services before Wi-Fi or after Wi-Fi. So the green end of the spectrum is people whose experiences were very good or good before Wi-Fi, and the red very bad and the grey bad. And as you can see, sort of perhaps maybe a third of people's experiences overall were in the good, very good element prior to engaging with Wi-Fi, which is kind of what you would expect given the nature of the beneficiary group. But afterwards, it all goes green, which is a kind of testament to the work of the navigator teams on the front line. That their engagement is not just with navigators, but with external services is vastly improved, and that enables them to sustain the kind of long-term engagement. So to cost effectiveness of Wi-Fi, we've taken the opportunity to look at the first sort of bulk bulk of data in terms of that kind of taking people's journeys and aligning them, and looking at what happens in the first year of people's Wi-Fi journey. And we've been able to scale this up so that we can have a look at what the impact of the project might be over the course of the 6 years. So what we've been able to show here is that there are savings of £9.8 million. We're making big savings to the public purse, and this is really where the system change element needs to kind of come in, because this is where we have to be able to have a system where we can transfer the savings to individual agencies into the interventions and preventative work that will continue those savings to carry on in the future.
I didn't know that I had bipolar disorder until I went into an assessment and treatment unit, and I really didn't know that I had alcoholism until I started to experience withdrawal and to go through some really, really awful stuff in my life. And what I realised is that afterwards, these principles of co-production were missing in my life. And now that they're not, I'm very happy, I'm very safe, and I'm very well. So I'm very passionate about making sure that this stuff can happen for other people. One of the things I'm slightly concerned about as an individual, though, is that we sometimes branch and we sometimes label stuff as co-production that actually isn't. So actually what I think sometimes we describe as co-production is actually engagement and involvement. The great thing for me about co-production, though, is about recognising that everybody's input is equal. No, I think co-production is much more than representation, and it's much more than involvement. So for me, co-production is a great place to get people connected again. For me, involvement, engagement, co-production should not be a separate entity. It is not something we do because it looks a bit sexy in the self-assessment framework. We do it because it's the core business of quality assurance. It's the core business of making a service the best that it can be. And I really think that once we start to embed co-production and the principles of within people's support plans, but also at the same time in terms of how we commission and provide services, at that point, then we start to really share power.
The work we're doing, the stuff about systems change, we're not changing systems to change systems, we're changing systems to stop people from dying. Early impact that comes from our first annual evaluation is that we are successfully reaching out to women. People who have come onto this programme are making better relationships with services. They're accessing them more quickly, they're staying involved for more time, and they're getting better outcomes. So we're finding, and this probably isn't a surprise, that for partnerships and for projects who are involving people with lived experience on the front line, they're getting more effective outcomes. People are getting more effective services. They're doing things better. They're feeling better. The involvement of lived experience in our 12 areas, as I said, is an absolute non-negotiable, and the involvement of it not being tokenistic is also non-negotiable. So there's very high expectations that people will be involved at every stage. And it isn't just about asking people what colour carpets we should have. It's about getting people to do things and tell us what we're doing wrong and tell us what we're doing right, and to be listened to and have an equal voice in things. I heard when I first came in somebody talk about how it's one thing to involve people in writing policies, but when decision making isn't shared equally, then that's still an issue, and I completely agree with that. I genuinely don't understand why we wouldn't involve people with lived experience in decision making, and nobody has yet been able to convince me that my view is wrong. So if people want to try, I'm really happy to have a conversation, but I don't think you'll be successful. One of the things that is really successful is that the flexible, holistic and well-resourced approach seems to be working. When we've asked individual views in the programme what's helped, that's what we've been told. It's the fact that people aren't given an appointment at 3 o'clock in 3 weeks' time, and if you're not there at 6 minutes past 3, your case is closed. You can walk in, you can see people. We have projects that are open 364 days a year. We have projects that are open from 7 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. We have projects, obviously, that go and do lots of the outreach stuff. It's that's working, which surely won't come as a surprise. We all want services to fit around our lives. Why do we expect our group of beneficiaries to be any different whatsoever. So overall, the initiative is successfully engaging with those who are most in need and have the most entrenched complex needs.
We've got the Wi-Fi System Change Action Network. The network will comprise representatives from across West Yorkshire, and the aim is about bringing system change via the System Change Action Plan. And hopefully this System Change Action Plan will effect change at a local, regional and national level so that we can understand the difference that Wi-Fi is bringing. We've already started using the local system change action networks to measure the impact of Wi-Fi to date. What we're beginning to understand is the crucial importance of the MABs, so the multi-agency review boards, are actually key in achieving some of those first steps towards system change, because we're not there yet. We're still in Service Flex, but Service Flex is part of the journey to get to system change.
So system change is about understanding and addressing the root causes of problems, and it's also an intentional process to influence components and structures. More and more, I think, and I think Wi-Fi certainly think this way, it's not about services, but it's actually about challenges and responses. And for us, it's about challenges and responses in a place. So that's about moving away from silo services to consider the role of the whole and what you can all add into responding to challenges. And that again requires voluntary organisations, statutory sector, businesses, communities, all those people to play a part. Complex issues cannot and actually just should not be solved by one actor alone, and it has to be a collaborative effort. So I'm talking about families, I'm talking about communities, groups that you're with, networks, as well as local authorities, voluntary. Everyone has a role in shifting the outcomes of a place and for individuals. Small-scale innovations aren't enough, and there's a real blocker when we're talking about how you move initiatives and projects that have fantastic results into the wider system. And if we want to change outcomes for people with multiple complex needs, we need to find a way to do that, because that has to be part of a wider system.